So for my ideal gifted program, I wanted to stick with sort of the mindset of the PechaKucha in the slideshow presentation, but obviously this one will be more of an actual PowerPoint with, statistics, data, evidence, things like that, instead of just a lot more images. But I really like the mindset of the PechaKucha. I just struggled, I think, with the time, as it's already 25 seconds, and it feels like that goes by very, very fast. So I do like this sort of walkthrough. I did not know that I could even record myself in PowerPoint up until this class. So I think that sort of gives PowerPoint a brand new sort of life to it. The philosophy, one of the first things that I had noticed in this class, Van Tassel, in my opinion, is definitely, spot on. Learner outcomes developed in most states may be too low, and they should be differentiated for the academically talented. Whether that is them just being too low, or whether that is something where, school districts have lowered them. I think either way, I think we're doing a huge disservice to a lot of our students by having them be too low. And I definitely think that, the best way to get the most out of our students is to have them differentiated for the academically talented. Uh, Another big thing with my philosophy, we need the whole building. It can't just be a gifted teacher. It can't just be the regular education teachers. It needs to be the entire building, whether that is guidance counselors, psychologists, core teachers, UA teachers, para educators, even the principal team. It's got to be everybody being on board with it. It's the same as learning support, right? We can't give them the best without the para educators. If there's one in the room, being able to assist them. It's the same thing with gifted, right? We need everybody, on board with it. Um, a dedicated gifted teacher in the building who pulls students out for individualized education, while also, when available, pushing into classes and working with the regular education teachers. I have seen at different districts where some districts do not even have a gifted teacher. They just use math and ELA coaches, who just pull some kids out. They'll pull the gifted kids out, and to round it up to 5 or 10, they'll just take the rest of the kids with the highest scores on a benchmark test or something like that. And that definitely, does our gifted students a disservice. So, having a dedicated gifted teacher that excels in that is a huge benefit, because I've looked into getting a math coaching certificate, and it's 4 math classes, and I don't feel that that's the benefit for the students the way an actual gifted education master's program would have. Dedicated trainings for all educators that would interact with those gifted students. We'll talk about that a lot more closer to the end. Definitions of gifted. Giftedness would be a student who, in my opinion, is statistically above a large percentile of students year after year in a measurable area of learning. I think that is broad enough to be able to incorporate a lot of different students who could potentially be gifted, but also closed enough or compact enough where we're able to justify it and analyze it no matter how we're going to look at it. So this would include core classes, performing arts classes, sports and athletic abilities, as well as social interactions. All 4 of those things, performing arts classes, my district calls them unified arts classes, but they're essentially the same thing. There are art, music, gym, things like that. Um, all of those things we are able to have some sort of a measurable area to, whether that be a leadership thing where we can mark that down, or performing arts, rubrics, things like that. National Excellence Report talked about the best way to find talent is to observe students in rich and varied educational settings, and that's why I really think it's important to make sure that everybody in the building is on board with this, because we're going to want to look at students in multiple different educational settings. Gifted also needs to be considered not just as someone who is above their peers, but also someone who learns at a noticeably faster pace. So I know that sounds a little different than the first bullet point sort of on here, but they're definitely related, because being able to learn at a noticeably faster pace also puts you above a larger percentile of students, but it's also statistically measurable. Things like pre-test, post-test, things like that. It allows us to always sort of compare them to other students and see how their growth is going as well. As far as identifying these students, one type of identification, in my opinion, is not equitable for all students. That puts low-income students, poverty students, ELLs, things like that at a very strong disadvantage. It also puts learning support students at a strong disadvantage because I've seen students that are learning support in one thing and gifted in something else. So identifying them just on one thing definitely does not help them. So multiple means are definitely needed. A comprehensive observation with data is required, just like everything else in school. It's got to be data driven. We got to be able to back up whatever we want to argue or justify. I would obviously look at proficiency tests and state assessments, whether that be PSSAs or whether that be things like my school does Fireflies or classroom diagnostic tools, which we call CDTs. We do them 3 times a year at the start, the middle, and the very end. It's a way to sort of see their growth, see their benchmarks compared to other students. Math, ELA, science, STEM, things like that. Project-based learning assessments in classes I think are really, really important. Being able to give students that freedom in a project-based learning to sort of attack the problem in different ways definitely allows us to sort of analyze their thought process and see how they're sort of trying to solve it compared to the traditional student. Statistical rubric comparisons for other students for any sort of non-core class or even core classes depending on the project. It does a huge benefit in being able to justify how students got to that above and beyond distinguished, advanced sort of thing. And I think it's a huge benefit for students. As far as the actual program organization, for me, gifted teachers pulling students out of the class. It gives them the small group. It allows the gifted teacher to provide gifted extensions, enrichment in a small group setting in their own gifted classroom, which I think is a huge benefit. Students in that classroom are given open learning opportunities within that gifted education classroom. It allows them the opportunity to explore, what they need, whether it's a math gifted education, whether it's leadership, performing arts, visual arts, things like that. They have those open learning opportunities. The only way we get those open learning opportunities is with a flexible curriculum and flexible standards. What is beneficial for our gifted group one year might absolutely not be beneficial for our gifted group the next year. And that is definitely something that administration needs to be on board with, of understanding that my curriculum might change based on the kids that I have in the class. This isn't something where I'm teaching parts of cells, for science, or whether I'm teaching how to add and subtract fractions, where I have to find a common denominator. And I have to do this and I have to do that. We need to be able to tailor it to whatever they are gifted in so we can help them become the best version of themselves. Gifted teacher, as well as any math or ELA coaches that we might have, providing push-in assistance in core classes during group time. This would be a benefit during group, so we can have that higher track group where we're able to, benefit those students as much as possible by giving them the extra push, the extra enrichment. And small groups allow for that acceleration for the gifted students compared to the traditional students in the classroom. Lastly, for the curriculum development, it would be mostly enrichment opportunities within the gifted classroom. I think that enrichment is really what sets those students apart from others. That's what puts them in that classroom, so they can get the not just extra, but they can get more higher level teaching opportunities or educational opportunities. It's a lot more challenging for those students. I think that's a lot more beneficial. Some parallel lessons to the curriculum with extension opportunities. So we're not just teaching a parallel lesson, but we are extending on it. We're building on it. We're giving them the opportunities, connecting this to real world experiences. We're pushing them that extra step with project-based learning, things like that. It would also be expanding on traditional lower level statement teaching. So not just the here's the parts of a cell, here's what they do. Focusing more on, well, let's look and see how the parts are interacting. Let's experiment with that. Let's get you outside running around. Oh, your heart rate's going up. Cool. Let's make all these connections, right? So it's a lot extra things. It's building on it. Like I had talked and touched on earlier, it's got to be the whole building. So to me, mandatory and service day trainings for all educators in the building. Anyone who would interact with gifted students in or outside of a classroom has to be a part of these trainings. And these trainings would be differentiated trainings. For core subject teachers, they would have a training. Unified arts specials teachers, they would have a different training. Paraeducators, coaches, they would have a different one. Psychologists, guidance counselors, principals, everybody would have a training that is focused on them. It is very important that students are getting these gifted benefits in all aspects of the educational day, not just the gifted classroom. I have seen that where pretty much it's a thing where it's like, hey, we have a gifted teacher for that, so we're not even going to give you the gifted IEP because you're not a gifted teacher. And it's like, well, no, if I can do something in my classroom, if I can do something in my UA or my special to benefit that student, like I want to be able to do that too. Like, it's got to be the whole building. And in order to have that, a really, really big thing is, it sounds a lot more simple than it is. We got to let the teachers teach. Got to let the gifted teacher be able to provide the gifted enrichment. One thing I love about my current district, my principals are very big on you're the teacher, you're the expert, you teach. We're the principal, we're the expert at that, we're going to principal, right? You're the guidance counselor. That's your area of expertise. Do it, right? Make it work. If you need us, we're here, open door, but we trust you. You're doing what's best for the students. Do what's best for the students. And that's something that you don't see at a lot of districts. You see a lot more structure, and gifted education can't always be that structure 24/7. It's got to be the openness. It's got to be the ability to let the kids explore, let the students learn, let the teachers teach. And when we have that, we're opening up a lot more doors for our students.